of the things is the whole thing about point of difference that I always kind of had to smile with. So just because overall, about all the brands you analyze, you observe that most consumers don't perceive much differences, right? That doesn't mean that it's impossible to achieve differentiation. So yes, I'm originally from Belgium. Whoa, here we go. Cheers. So when I was growing up in marketing, it was all about making your brand different. It was all about point of difference, right? And that influenced so many things. So at a fun anecdote at the Tech School of Business, I think I was there my first or second year, and so the Tech School of Business is pretty famous in the Americas, but not in Europe. So what they were trying to do is to get more awareness among European MBA students, and so they invited a whole bunch of journalists of European, business newsletters and magazines to come over and take a look and so forth. And so I was supposed to wine and dine them because I was European, right? And they had this brochure, and it was all wrong because it was all talking about their point of difference. So they say, okay, here is how we're better than Harvard, right? We have smaller class sizes. The faculty is more accessible. You actually will be taught by them. And so they had all these things that they were better than Harvard because that was the point of reference of the European journalist. And I'm like, you first have to establish your point of parity. Before you tell people how you're different, you first have to say that you're in the same league as Harvard. So what you have to say first is, look, we have the same or even better faculty than at Harvard, right? The salary of our finishing MBA students is this much higher. We're also Ivy League, and so forth and so forth. Because why? If they don't have the point of parity, the journalist will make negative associations. So if you say the class size is small, they will say, oh, Tuck is not so popular. If you say faculty is accessible, they will think, oh, because they're not so good. So you have to first kind of establish you're a serious player, or that you can be compared with the people you're comparing with, and then you can say, right, so we're as good as Harvard on all of these things, and we're much better than Harvard in the size of the class, accessibility of the faculty. And so that is one of the things that I really liked about Byron Sharp and Jenny Romaniuk and how brands grow, right? They went against this whole kind of point in the 80s and the 90s that you really had to just be different as a brand. You always had to think about your point of difference. And so, they came out with the insight, look, the consumers don't care that much about you. So being very kind of mentally and physically accessible is very important. And they really kind of hammered that home. Of course, now the irony is that the pendulum has switched, right? So because of the success, I now see, and most of my kind of papers about some blind spots in that approach. It's an approach that puts reach over frequency, at any cost, right? So the optimal frequency is always one in their approach. You have to just reach as many people as you can, even if they're completely not in the market for you. So that's actually very absurd to me, right? So if you if you have limited budgets, why would you spend them mostly on people who are not kind of at that moment interested in buying your product? I think a lot of it boils down to the assumption about also which part of consumer thinking and behavior do you think you can influence with your marketing. So in the old point of view, you can actually make people care, right? You can do something so cool that you can make people care, and that seems to be an assumption that a hypothesis that can be tested, right? One of the things in Ehrenberg Bass, an interesting assumption is that heavy users, you can never increase their usage. So don't focus on heavy users, because you can't increase how much they use your brand or the category. That's an interesting hypothesis that may be true for some brands in some places. The same thing with differentiation, right? So just because overall, about all the brands you analyze, you observe that most consumers don't perceive much differences, right? That doesn't mean that it's impossible to achieve differentiation. I mean, both of us can come up with lots of brands that have been able to have a strong differentiation and have lots of benefits as a result. I mean, my 12-year-old is completely loyal to Nintendo. We're selling his PlayStation and Xbox because he's so enamored with Nintendo, because it's so differentiated in his mind that, and they got lots of benefits. So just because something is hard to do doesn't mean it's impossible. And it certainly doesn't mean that it's not worth trying, because if you can show that the benefits will be fantastic, that it may be something that as an organization you decide to focus on.